I was dead asleep when I felt someone slide in behind me on the couch, and honestly, I thought I was dreaming. You know that moment where your brain is still catching up, that kind of half-conscious state where you're not sure if you're awake or stuck in some weird dream? Yeah, that was me. And the weirdest part, the guy pulling me close had this quiet confidence, like he belonged there, even though I definitely didn't know him. Okay, let me back up a bit, because the whole thing needs some context. I was crashing at my best friend's place, Mark, after a brutal week at work. Mark and I have been friends forever, and he's kind of the guy who can fix anything. Cars, computers, even broken spirits. He lives in this tiny, slightly messy apartment downtown, where the couch is basically worn down to the springs, but it's homey enough. That night, Mark had to run out last minute for some emergency work call, so he left me his place and his cat, who, by the way, did not like me one bit. I was sprawled out on that couch, fully intending to binge watch some dumb show and zone out until I passed out. I had my phone bookmarked to an old sitcom, absolutely not expecting any company or interruptions. The room was dark except for the flickering TV light, and honestly, I was already halfway to dreamland when it happened. This quiet shuffle behind me and then a warm presence sliding in close. At first, I thought maybe it was Mark sneaking back in early or messing with me. But no, Mark wouldn't slide in behind someone without saying something, and this guy smelled different, like a mix of cologne and freshly brewed coffee. I turned my head just a bit, not fully awake yet, and caught a glimpse of dark hair and a profile that looked oddly familiar, but I couldn't place him. It was the kind of face you think you know but can't quite remember from where. Then the voice came, low and soft. "Hey, sorry, I thought you were someone else." That's when my brain finally kicked in. I froze for a second, trying to process what just happened. Who the hell was this guy? And why did he think I was someone else? The whole situation was awkward enough to make me want to vanish into the couch cushions. But instead, I just stayed still, waiting for him to explain himself. Turns out, he thought I was his girlfriend. Yeah, I know, it sounds insane. But that's what he said. Apparently, he was supposed to meet up with her at Mark's place. He thought Mark's apartment was hers this whole time, and I just happened to be in the wrong place at exactly the wrong time. Or maybe the right time? I wasn't sure yet. What started as a confusing mix-up quickly turned into this weird, unexpected night neither of us could have planned. And honestly, as much as I wanted to push him away and call this a weird random encounter, there was something about the way he looked at me that made me want to stick around and see where this could go. But that's jumping ahead. Right now, I was just lying there trying to make sense of a stranger spooning me like I was someone he loved. And I'm pretty sure this was only the beginning. I finally turned fully to face him, blinking hard to clear the fog from my eyes. He had this nervous kind of smile, the kind that makes you think he's used to awkward situations but still not totally comfortable in them. He ran a hand through his hair like he was trying to straighten out a mess. Kind of like me, but with actual hair to work with. "Sorry," he said again, quieter this time. "I thought you were, I don't know, Emma." He hesitated, like saying the name out loud made the situation even more surreal. Emma. Right. The mystery girlfriend I'd apparently replaced. I raised an eyebrow, still half expecting him to vanish into thin air or confess he was some undercover prankster. "So you just walked into Mark's place and thought I was your girlfriend?" I asked, still trying to process this whole thing. "And just slid in behind me like this?" He shrugged, a little embarrassed. "Yeah, I guess I was out of it. Long day, and I was supposed to meet Emma here. She said she'd be on the couch. I didn't expect anyone else to be here." I couldn't help but laugh softly. The whole thing was ridiculous, but also kind of endearing. Here was this guy, obviously nervous, clearly not the type to just barge into random apartments. Yet, here we were, tangled up like some weird accidental cuddle session. "What's your name?" I asked, sitting up a bit so we weren't practically spooning anymore. "Luke," he said, smiling, for real this time. "And you are?" "Ben." "Nice to meet you, Ben," he said, like that was the most natural thing in the world, even though it definitely wasn't. I glanced at the clock on the wall, 3:17 a.m. Great timing, right? The city outside was quiet, the only sound being the faint hum of traffic and the occasional cat meow from the windowsill. "So what's the plan now, Luke?" I asked, half joking. "Sit here awkwardly until Emma shows up?" He chuckled and shook his head. "No idea. I mean, I was supposed to see her here. But now, well, honestly, I'm not sure what to do." I could tell he felt a bit stranded, like this sudden mix-up threw off his whole night. And weirdly, I felt a little bad for him. It wasn't every day a stranger mistakes you for their partner and slides in like it's nothing. "Well, you're welcome to stay," I said before I could stop myself. "It's your mistake, but I'm not exactly planning on going anywhere either." Luke looked surprised but grateful. "Thanks, man." "I appreciate that." We settled back onto the couch, this time with a bit more space between us, but the tension was still there, like the air was charged with something neither of us fully understood yet. We started talking, awkwardly at first, just trying to fill the silence. "So what does Emma look like?" I asked, genuinely curious. Luke hesitated. He paused, searching for the right words. "She's got dark hair, kind eyes. We've been doing long distance for a while, so seeing her was kind of a big deal." I nodded, imagining a girl who was probably as real to him as this whole night was feeling unreal to me. "And you're here in Mark's place, thinking she'd be here waiting on the couch?" I asked. "Yeah, she moved here recently, but maybe gave me the wrong address or something. I don't know." We both laughed at the absurdity of it all, and that's when something shifted, just a little. The guard I'd instinctively put up for strangers started to lower. Luke was different, not just because of the mix-up, but because there was this genuine kindness in his voice, this quiet vulnerability I rarely saw in people. We talked for hours, or at least it felt like hours, about everything and nothing. He told me about his job as a barista, his obsession with vinyl records, and how he'd always wanted to live in the city but never quite made the jump until now. I shared stories about my own messy life, my job in marketing, my failed attempts at dating apps, and how I pretty much considered my couch the safest place to hide from the world. Somewhere between conspiracy theories about why Emma never showed up and arguments over the best pizza joint in the city, I realized I wasn't just stuck with a confused stranger. I was genuinely intrigued by him. As dawn started creeping through the blinds, Luke's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and sighed. "Emma's texting," he said, voice tight with something I couldn't quite place. I watched him scroll through the messages, all short apologies and confusion. Apparently, Emma had been dealing with a family emergency and couldn't make it. She had tried calling but hadn't gotten through. Luke looked up at me, eyes tired but honest. "I guess she's not coming." I shrugged. "Well, you've got me now. I'm not going anywhere." He smiled, a real smile, the kind that reaches the eyes. And for the first time that night, I felt like maybe this weird mistake was exactly where I was supposed to be. Neither of us knew what was going to happen next. But for once, I was okay with the unexpected sliding in behind me, even if it wasn't what I expected at all. The sun was just starting to peek through the blinds when Luke finally stretched and stood up, rubbing his face like he hadn't slept in days. I realized I hadn't either, but I didn't mind. Somehow, the hours had flown by without me noticing. "So what now?" I asked, still half in my pajamas, feeling more awake than I had all week. Luke paused and looked around the cluttered apartment like it suddenly hit him that this was someone else's space. Not just a crash pad, but a real home. I guess I should figure out what to do next. Emma's probably not going to be back for a while, and I don't really know anyone else here. I felt a little tug of sympathy for him. City life can be brutal when you're new and alone. You want to grab some breakfast? There's this diner down the street that's open 24/7. Best pancakes I've ever had. His face brightened a bit. "Yeah, that sounds amazing." We got up, me fumbling for shoes, Luke slipping on a hoodie he found on the chair. The cat, still not thrilled with me, gave us a disdainful glare but decided to stay put on the windowsill. Outside, the city was waking up. The air had that fresh, early morning chill that felt like a clean slate. As we walked, Luke told me about the kind of music he liked, the old soul and indie stuff, and I tried not to laugh when he admitted he still listened to boy bands from the early 2000s. At the diner, the waitress already knew us, well, at least me, since I'd been there plenty of times before, and slid 2 coffees and menus in front of us before we even sat down. We ordered pancakes, eggs, and the kind of greasy hash browns that make you feel guilty but satisfied. It was simple, comfortable, like we'd done this 100 times before. So what made you move here? I asked, genuinely curious. Luke looked down at his coffee, swirling the liquid like it held the answer. I needed a fresh start, I guess. My old town felt too small, like I was stuck in this pattern I couldn't break. Plus, Emma was here, so I thought, why not? I nodded, understanding that feeling all too well. Sometimes chasing someone else's life feels easier than figuring out your own. And now? I pressed because the way he looked at me when he said Emma wasn't coming back told me this wasn't just some passing disappointment. Now, I don't really know. I guess I'm trying to figure out who I am without her. That hit me harder than I expected. We spent so much time defining ourselves by the people we're with, it's easy to forget who we are alone. I reached out and bumped his hand lightly, a silent, "You're not alone" kind of thing. Luke smiled that easy smile again, the one that made his eyes crinkle just a little. After breakfast, we wandered back toward Mark's place, the city buzzing louder now, full of people with their own stories and secrets. Luke stopped outside a little record shop and perked up. "You like music?" he asked. "Yeah, I'm no expert, but I'm down for a good soundtrack." We went inside, the smell of vinyl and old paper hitting me like a nostalgia bomb. Luke immediately started pulling out records, explaining what he liked about each one, with this passion that made me see a whole side of him I hadn't glimpsed yet. I found myself smiling more than I had in a long time. It was weird how quickly this guy had slipped into my life, uninvited, but welcome. Outside the shop, Luke hesitated. "Hey, would you want to grab dinner sometime? I mean, not just because of the Emma mix-up." He added quickly, almost like he was afraid I'd say no. I felt a little flutter in my chest, the kind you don't get from pancakes alone. "Yeah," I said, "I'd like that." He grinned, that same nervous but hopeful look. "Cool. I'll figure out the details and text you." We exchanged numbers, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I was actually looking forward to a text. That night, back at Mark's apartment, I lay on the couch thinking about everything that had happened, the mistaken identity, the unexpected company, the way Luke had made me feel seen without even trying. Maybe it was crazy. Maybe it was too soon to think about anything beyond this strange night. But for the first time in a while, I felt like something new was possible. And really, isn't that what we're all chasing? The chance to wake up next to someone who's a total stranger one night, and maybe, just maybe, the start of something real the next. Over the next few days, Luke and I kept texting. Sometimes quick, "How's your day?" messages. Sometimes long threads about music or dumb TV shows. We both pretended to hate but secretly loved. It felt casual but electric, like we'd both stumbled into something neither of us really expected. Then came Friday night. Luke had invited me out to this little rooftop bar he'd discovered, somewhere between dive and trendy, perfect for people who wanted to feel like they belonged without all the fuss. I showed up after work, still carrying that day's stress in my shoulders, but as soon as I saw him waiting by the door, all of it started to melt away. He was wearing this slightly worn leather jacket that somehow made him look both laid back and a little dangerous. Not the kind of danger you need to avoid, but the kind that makes your heart race a bit. "Hey," he said, grinning like he'd been waiting for me all day. "Hey yourself," I replied, feeling like a teenager again, awkward but excited. The bar was small, packed with people laughing and talking over music that wasn't too loud to kill We found a tiny table by the edge, the city skyline stretching out behind us, glittering like 1,000 tiny stars. We ordered drinks, him a whiskey neat, me something fruity and maybe a little embarrassing, and settled into this easy rhythm of talking, laughing, and stealing glances that lasted a little too long. "So what's the real story with Emma?" I asked after a while, voice low enough that only Luke could hear. He sighed, swirling his drink. "She and we weren't really on the same page. I thought we were, but I guess we weren't. Moving here was supposed to be the start of something, but maybe I was just chasing an idea." I nodded, understanding that feeling of chasing something that turns out to be a mirage. "That please mess, but maybe it's good you found out now rather than later." He smiled, a little sad but also kind of relieved. "Yeah. And then there's you. This whole random thing. that somehow feels right. My heart did a stupid little flip. I was thinking the same. We toasted to that. Random mistakes turning into something worth exploring. Later, as the night grew deeper and the crowd thinner, Luke reached over and took my hand. It wasn't a grand gesture or anything showy, just quiet and tentative. I didn't pull away. Instead, I squeezed his hand back, feeling like I'd found something I didn't even know I'd been missing. Walking home, the city felt different, less harsh, less lonely. We talked about everything and nothing, the kind of conversation that makes time disappear. When we got to Mark's building, Luke stopped me before I went inside. "Can I come up for a bit? I don't want to rush things, but I don't want this night to end yet." I hesitated for a second. I wasn't usually the type to invite someone I barely knew up to my place, but with Luke, it felt natural, like it just made sense. "Yeah," I said, unlocking the door. "Come on up." Inside, the apartment felt warmer somehow, like it held the memory of all the nights Mark and I had spent there, but now it had this new energy, something quieter and softer. We sat on the couch, closer this time, the tension between us growing but still gentle. Luke leaned his head on my shoulder, and I rested mine against his hair, breathing in the faint scent of coffee and something else, something that felt like possibility. "I don't know where this is going," he said softly, "but I'm glad I found you." "Me too," I whispered back. We didn't need words after that. The night stretched out around us as we let ourselves be present. No expectations, no pressure, just two people finding something real in the middle of a ridiculous mix-up. And honestly, that felt like everything. The next morning, I woke up to the soft glow of sunlight sneaking through the blinds and the quiet sound of Luke rummaging in the kitchen. For a moment, I just lay there, soaking in the fact that he was still here, still real, still part of this unexpected new chapter I hadn't even known I wanted. "Hey," he said, turning around with that sleepy smile that made my chest tighten. "I hope you don't mind, but I made coffee." I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. "You're kidding. You made coffee?" He laughed, the kind of genuine, easy laugh that made me feel like everything was going to be okay. "Yeah, and I actually remembered how. I'm not just good at vinyl records, apparently." I swung my legs off the couch and stretched. "Well, you just earned major points in my book." We moved to the tiny kitchen, where Luke poured coffee into two mismatched mugs. The apartment smelled like caffeine and possibility, and for a minute, I thought about how strange it was that someone I barely knew was becoming this comfortable presence in my life. We sat down to drink, the silence between us warm and unforced. Then Luke broke it. "So what's your story been? Like, really? You seemed kind of closed off when I first got here." I smiled, appreciating the question. "Yeah, I guess I am a little. I've had my heart broken more times than I can count. And honestly, I wasn't expecting to meet someone like you." He nodded, eyes searching mine. "Sometimes the best things come when you're not looking." I wanted to tell him everything. The loneliness, the failed dates, the nights I spent wondering if maybe I was meant to be alone. But somehow, I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I just reached across the table and took his hand, letting the silence say what words couldn't. Days turned into weeks, and Luke stayed, not just at Mark's place for the night, but in my life. We fell into this strange rhythm, cooking together in the cramped kitchen, arguing over which movie to watch, sharing playlists and stories. The city felt less overwhelming, like we'd carved out a little world of our own amid the noise. One evening, we were sprawled on the couch, a movie playing low in the background. Luke's head was on my chest, and I traced patterns on his arm, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "I never thought a mistake could lead to something like this," he said softly. I smiled, my fingers still moving over his skin. "Me neither. It's like I woke up one day and found someone who just fits." He looked up, eyes glinting in the dim light. "Ben, do you think, where is this going for us?" The question caught me off guard. I'd been so caught up in the now that I hadn't thought much about the future. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I want to find out. With you." He grinned, that same nervous excitement I'd seen the very first night. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." The next few weeks brought their own challenges. Luke started looking for a place of his own, and I cheered him on, even though the idea of him leaving made me realize how much I'd come to depend on having him around. We navigated awkward family dinners, friends, questions, and the slow but steady process of figuring out how to be a couple in a world that wasn't always ready for us. One night, after a long day that felt like everything was too much, Luke surprised me by cooking dinner. Not the usual takeout or diner food, but this incredible homemade pasta with sauce that was just spicy enough to make my eyes water. As we ate, he reached across the table and took my hand. I don't want to waste any more time pretending this is just some fling. I like you. A lot. My heart hammered. I feel the same. He smiled, relief washing over his face. So, what do we do now? I thought about it. The late night talks, the quiet mornings, the way he'd made me feel seen when I thought I was invisible. We keep doing what we're doing, I said with a grin, and see where it takes us. Luke squeezed my hand. Sounds perfect. Looking back, it's crazy how one mistaken identity and a sliding in behind me on a couch could upend everything. But sometimes, the best love stories start with the most unexpected beginnings. And honestly, I'm grateful every day that he thought I was someone else, because it led me to exactly who I'm supposed to be with. A few weeks after Luke moved into his own place, things settled into this weirdly wonderful routine. We'd text throughout the day, catch up over late-night phone calls, and weekends were reserved for spontaneous visits, movie marathons, or just wandering the city streets. No agenda, just us. But as much as I loved how natural it all felt, there was this quiet tension underneath it. You know, the kind that creeps in when you realize you're not just dating casually anymore, but you haven't exactly said it out loud either. That unspoken question, where do we go from here? One chilly Saturday afternoon, Luke texted me out of the blue. Want to come over? I've got something to show you. Curious, I threw on a jacket and made my way to his apartment. His place was a bit smaller than Mark's, but Luke had filled it with little touches that made it feel like home. Plants on the windowsill, stacks of records leaning against the wall, and that famous coffee scent lingering in the air. He greeted me with that same shy smile, holding a small, neatly wrapped package behind his back. Okay, what's this? I asked, eyeing the gift. Open it, he urged, voice a little nervous. I peeled back the paper and unfolded a photograph. It was a picture of Luke, younger, standing in front of a vintage record store with a huge grin. That's me a few years ago, he said, watching my reaction. That was the first record shop I ever worked at. I've always loved music, but that place, it felt like I belonged. I smiled, touched by how much this meant to him. Why show me this now? I asked. Luke took a deep breath. Because I want you to know who I am, not just the guy who slid in behind you on a couch by mistake. The real me. And I want to be part of your story too. Something in his voice made my heart ache with something I hadn't felt before. Something steady and true. I reached out, pulling him into a hug. I'm glad you're in my story, Luke. You've been here since the first accidental moment, and I want you here for everything that comes next. He pulled back, eyes shining. So are we official then? Because I'm pretty sure I'm falling for you. I laughed, feeling the warmth spread through me. Yeah, I think I am too. That night, we stayed up late talking about hopes, fears, and the kind of future that suddenly didn't seem so scary when shared with someone else. The city outside hummed quietly, but in that tiny apartment, everything felt right. A few days later, I invited Luke over to Mark's place for dinner. Mark was out of town, so it was just us and the cat, who, surprisingly, was starting to tolerate Luke. We cooked together, laughing over burnt garlic bread and arguing about the best toppings for pizza. It was messy and imperfect, but it was ours. After dinner, as we were cleaning up, Luke looked at me and said, Ben, I don't want to rush things, but I feel like I need to tell the people in my life about us. I want to be proud of this. I nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. Me too. It's scary, but if this is real, it's worth it. So, we started telling people, carefully, one step at a time. Friends were mostly supportive, some surprised, but all happy for us. And when Luke introduced me to his family, it was awkward and sweet, the kind of moment that makes you realize how much courage it takes to be honest. Through all of it, we held on to each other, navigating the ups and downs like a team. There were disagreements, sure, moments where past baggage bubbled up or insecurities crept in, but every time, we found a way back to the truth we'd built together. One rainy evening, as we sat on the couch watching the city lights blur through the window, Luke turned to me with a seriousness that made my stomach flip. "Ben, I know this started as a mistake, but I don't want it to ever feel like one. You're the best thing that's happened to me." I smiled, reaching out to brush his hair back. "You're pretty amazing yourself." He leaned in, our foreheads touching. "So what do you say we keep writing this story together?" I nodded, feeling the weight and the lightness of those words all at once. Together. Sometimes, life throws you into the arms of a stranger by accident. And sometimes, that stranger turns out to be exactly who you've been waiting for. Months passed, and what started as a total accident, Luke mistaking me for someone else, had grown into something steady and real. We weren't perfect. We had our moments of frustration and doubt, but those were balanced out by laughter, late-night talks, and the kind of comfort that comes from knowing someone truly gets you. One quiet Sunday afternoon, we found ourselves back at Mark's place. The couch that had accidentally brought us together, now a kind of symbol in our story. Luke had his head resting on my shoulder, and I was tracing little circles on his arm. The cat, now mostly indifferent to us, lounged nearby. Luke looked up, eyes soft. "You ever think about how weird this all is? Like, the randomness of it?" I smiled. "All the time. But sometimes the weirdest things turn out to be the best things." He nodded, and after a moment, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn piece of paper. "I wrote something," he said, voice a little shaky. "Not a poem or anything fancy, just my way of saying how much you mean to me." I took the paper and read it quietly. It was simple, honest, nothing over the top. But it was exactly what I needed to hear. "I'm not great with words," Luke admitted. "But I want you to know that this, us, it's the real thing. Not just some accident or mistake. You've made me feel seen in a way I didn't think was possible." My chest tightened, and I reached out to squeeze his hand. "Luke, you've changed my life. I was happy before, sure, but now I feel like I'm home." We sat like that for a while, just holding on to each other in the soft afternoon light. No grand declarations, no dramatic gestures, just two people who had found something worth keeping. Later, as I walked home, I thought about how unexpected life can be. Sometimes you wake up to a stranger sliding in behind you, and that moment spins your world in a way you never saw coming. But if you're lucky, you hold on to that moment and see where it leads. Because in the end, love isn't about perfect timing or grand plans. It's about the messy, beautiful surprises that sneak up on you when you least expect them. And for me, that surprise was Luke. Unexpected, unplanned, and exactly right.